This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio, a review of the brand new Norwegian Aqua this week from Chris, also staff writer Richard Sims, back from Alaska here with Cruise News. And also, as you know, we had Emma and Matt on last week about thecruiseglobe.com. I had a couple of emails saying that folks went to cruiseglobe.com and it didn't work. You have to put in so it's thecruiseglobe.com to track your cruise, and you can check your exact path out. It's really, really cool. All right, fresh off the boat from Alaska, staff writer Richard Sims. Hey, man.
Hey, yeah, fresh off the boat and a little still jet lagged, so forgive me if I do a little more stumbling than normal.
Well, we'll kick things off here with some pretty major flooding on a cruise ship a couple of days ago.
This is insane to me. When I saw the photos that various people had sent to you on the tip line, when you sail to the Bahamas, you know what to expect: sun and sand, flooded balconies. Well, okay, maybe not that last one so much, but that's exactly what happened on the Carnival Conquest. The area has been hammered by some really severe storms. You got some of this in Florida. You were telling me about this, how, you got a couple of inches in an hour. That's just an incredible amount of rain. And as a result, corridors were flooding. Some of the images that we've seen posted of, every now and then you see pictures of water running down a staircase or something like that. But this was crazy. This was like water coming from the ceilings and down the staircases, and a balcony where it looked as if the balcony was going to turn into a swimming pool. I can't even imagine this. But it's not just wet, it's flooded. Doug, it seemed to me as if this flooding was much worse than you might expect. And I'm guessing, based on a conversation you and I had, that some of it might have to do with the fact that it's such an older ship, and so it may not really be prepared for this. Do you think that plays into it?
To me, it sounds like the drainage system couldn't keep up. I mean, you have hundreds of balcony cabins with rain coming in sideways. That's going to put a strain on the plumbing system there as far as the drainage system. And also the rain coming in by the pool, all the other decks going down to the other deck. Yeah, if I were to guess, I would just say the pipes couldn't keep up, but who am I?
Is there a question here of whether they should have not been sailing in the area they're in? Like, are they the only ship that has experienced this? Or is it really that it's not about necessarily where they are sailing so much as the unexpected severity of the rain?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ships were in that area at the same time. According to marine traffic, I was looking to see who was all in that area in the Bahamas, and rain's going to rain, right? You can't control how much rain's going to come out of those clouds.
Well, I guess we'll definitely be talking about this again next week, at least as far as giving a follow-up on, what the outcome was.
And we have an update on that latest controversial tax that's being aimed at cruise ship passengers in Mexico.
Yeah, we've talked about this one quite a bit for a while now. The latest update is certainly being seen as a win for the cruise industry. So you might recall that a while back, Mexico's political bodies kind of passed what was being called a non-residential duty, which would see every cruiser paying, if it had gone through, paying $42 per person when ships docked in Mexico. This tax was due to go into effect on January 1st of this year, but as sort of, controversy swirled around it, and there was a very big pushback from the cruise lines. So then it was decided that the tax would go into effect on July 1st. But, no matter when it was supposed to go into effect, it's safe to say that the cruise industry was not happy with the idea of this tax. Well, now it's being reported by the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association that a new agreement has been reached. As of January 1st, a tax will go into effect, but it'll only be $5 per guest. This is part of a fee schedule that will see the tax go up a little bit each year until the summer of 2028, at which point it's set to hit $21. Now, frankly, I will be shocked if, when that point rolls around in the summer of 2028, we actually see a $21 tax, because I think that, having seen a victory here and gotten it knocked down from $42 to $5, that as we get closer to that, the cruise lines are going to say, you know what? No, we're not willing to pay $21 per person. Let's renegotiate this. But as of right now, it's definitely considered a win because, they got it knocked down from $42 to $5. So we'll have to see exactly as this plays out over the next year or two and they hit the various dates where the price is supposed to go up again, whether that happens or we continue to see future negotiations.
And it looks like if you're scheduled to go to Labadee, Haiti on Royal Caribbean through August, you could be disappointed.
Yeah, the State Department's continuing to issue warnings saying that residents should not be traveling to Haiti and the various islands in that vicinity because of the violence that's been taking place. So Royal Caribbean has made the decision to cancel visits to their private destination of Labadee for at least the rest of the summer. We don't know what will happen after that, whether they will return or whether, it's really going to depend on the geopolitical situation there. It's, obviously they don't want to put people in danger. Now, it's important to note that Labadee is not in the area where this violence is taking place. But the whole area has been put sort of under a warning and under a restriction. And, as they always say, they want to proceed with caution and make sure that they're keeping passengers and their own crew and the people who work at Labadee, keep them all safe. It's also worth mentioning this isn't a new situation. Last year, they had to skip going to Labadee for like 7 months due to this same situation. Now, ships which are scheduled to call here are being sent to other destinations, such as Nassau. In some cases, they're, changing the itinerary to add a sea day, which I'm sure is not exactly thrilling a lot of passengers. People love going to destinations, whether it's Labadee or one of the other cruise line private islands. That's always a highlight. I know for me, it's always a really big thing that I look forward to on trips. But it is obviously being done in the name of safety. But the real loser here, I would think, kind of turns out to be Royal Caribbean because they're no doubt losing money every single time a ship doesn't go there, because it's better Labadee than Perfect Day because Perfect Day has so many upcharge features that, come with a visit to that particular destination. Whereas Labadee is a little more low key. It doesn't have like the big water parks and the big cabanas over the water and all that. So they're definitely not losing as much money as they would if this were happening at Perfect Day, but it's still got to be taking a little bit of a hit in the financials. I think we'll probably see that play out over the next couple of quarters when they're talking about their when they do their earnings calls. They'll have to factor in, how this impacts it.
Yeah, and for reference, the way the crow flies, it's 138 miles from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, where all the action is, up to Labadee, which is on the northern kind of tip of Haiti there. So quite far away, but still being cautious. And moving on here, we have big news regarding the future of a Carnival ship.
Yeah, this is a ship that's leaving the Carnival fleet, not the Carnival Cruise Line fleet. It's important to note it's the corporate Carnival Corporation. They, as you know, own Costa, and they've been in the middle of a plan over the last few years to sort of downsize and reconfigure things. And as part of that, we've already seen 3 different ships go from the Costa division over to Carnival Cruise Line. That is not what's happening here, though. This is the Costa Fortuna, which is going to continue sailing with Costa until the end of 2026, then go into dry dock. And after that, and I don't think any of us saw this coming, it is going to become the 3rd ship in the Margaritaville at Sea fleet. This kind of surprised me because, as recently as probably a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we kind of speculated a little bit that Margaritaville might wind up not surviving. But then they took on this 2nd ship and they found a whole new life, the Islander, and now they're adding a 3rd ship. We do not know what the name of this ship will be. We do not know what changes it'll undergo, although it's safe to assume it'll do some of the basic theming that goes with the Margaritaville. You get the hamburger in paradise, and you get the shows that go with this, and the giant sandal in the atrium kind of thing. We also don't know where they'll be home porting. They said that it will be given from what they said, it seemed to indicate there might be a different home port in store. Any thoughts on where this ship might end up?
I would like to see Jacksonville because it could technically fit under the bridge. And not many ships can except, Spirit and Fantasy class ships. So that would be nice. Otherwise, I really have no clue.
Hey, maybe it's time to do an East Coast version and do some sailings out of New York. But we know that's not going to happen, because really they specialize in 2 and 3 day sailings, and there's not much you can do with that out of New York City. So it seems very unlikely that would be the case. However, they could look at, ports like Galveston or even like New Orleans, something like that. It'll be really interesting to see where this ship ends up and exactly what name it gets and what theming it gets.
I would be surprised to see it go out of New Orleans because there's a lot of overhead there with the piloting fees, taking that 8 to 10 hour ride up and down the Mississippi to get there. But yeah,
right.
It'll be interesting to see where that goes. And also, speaking of Jacksonville and ships, I didn't realize this. I know that Norwegian Gem is one of your favorite ships from Norwegian Cruise Line. They're going to start sailing out of here in November, which I know we talked about like last year, but I can't believe it's like 6 months away now.
Wow. You know what? I worry about my precious Gem because, it is one of the older ships in the fleet, and ships do have a certain shelf life. And I might have to just fly down there and do a sailing out of Jacksonville and get, sort of a different experience. I've never done that. That would be kind of cool. And doing one of my favorite ships out of a new port would be, and I'll tell you, part of this is coming out of the fact that I did just do this trip to Alaska. And I don't usually travel to do sailings. Mm-hmm. And that really kind of opened me up a little bit. Was like, nice. Yes, I don't necessarily want to fly to Vancouver again. It was a long flight, but Florida is a pretty easy flight.
Yeah.
And I've done it a million times for Disney World. Why not do it for some ships? So I might start expanding my horizons a bit.
And finally, proof that honesty is the best policy, but you still might wind up getting in trouble.
Yeah. You almost feel bad when someone does the right thing and it still winds up costing them. So a 60-year-old woman named Pam Walker was getting off, I believe it was Liberty of the Seas in Bermuda. And she kind of wandered over to the customs agents and said, are drugs illegal here? And they were like, well, yes. And she said, if I had some weed, would you take it? Or should I just go back and leave it on the ship? She was I just picture this little old lady being like, what should I do with the drugs that I happen to have with me? She had just arrived. And when she was told it was illegal, she's like, okay, well, I don't want to get in any trouble, and asked exactly what she should do. And they told her, what needed to be done. She was checked. Customs officers wound up seizing plastic bags of marijuana as well as a small amount of cocaine. All of it was for personal use, they determined. They also, she went to court, and the judge was clearly impressed with the fact that, she kind of did the right thing here. But despite that, she wound up walking away with a $2,500 fee because of the drugs she had with her. The judge said she was, the defense attorney said she was cooperative. She admitted to the offense immediately, and she expressed genuine remorse. But one of the things the judge said very correctly was, listen, you did the right thing and, more power to you, but you could have been in a much worse situation here. In some countries, you could have been in big trouble. You could have been immediately thrown in jail. And he suggested that the thing you always want to do, especially if you're traveling with medical marijuana or something like that, is do your research. You have to know. He actually said, and this is a quote, some countries kill for these types of offenses. And he's completely right. They have very strict drug laws in a lot of these countries. And it's a very easy thing to find out. I mean, just search real quickly, and basically you're going to find out, no, you are not allowed to bring drugs on a cruise ship. But she did face up, and she paid her fine, and did the right thing, I guess.
And listener question from Pam, email yours, Doug@cruiseradio.net. I know Richard just stayed in a Neptune suite on Holland America. We are considering booking one of those. What is it like?
Okay, well, first of all, I'll tell you this. If you're going to Alaska, which is what I was doing, I was sailing out of Vancouver up to Alaska, doing the Inside Passage and Glacier Bay and all that. I cannot more highly recommend both the Koningsdam and a Neptune suite. I was traveling with my neighbor. We had matching Neptune suites on deck 5, which is the Gershwin deck, because it's a musically themed ship. And the way these are set up, first of all, the rooms are beautiful, very big, huge, gorgeous bathroom with, a whirlpool tub and a shower, and there's even what I called a fainting couch in the main room. It's exactly what you would see if you looked up a fainting couch from like the 1800s. It's so cool. But the best part about it was the balcony, which goes out the back. It was an aft-facing balcony, and then it wrapped all the way around the side. So I had one on the left side of the ship. She had one on the right side of the ship. No matter which side the views were on, we were covered. But the other thing that I really loved was that the Neptune suite is basically their version of a ship within a ship concept, because you had access to the Club Orange dining room and the Neptune lounge, where they had a concierge who could, help you make dinner reservations and all that. You and I are going to talk about this more in depth when we do a review of the ship as a whole on that particular trip. But all I will say right now is, yes, if you can swing it, a Neptune suite is 100% worth the extra cost. The perks that came with it were phenomenal. I think automatically when you book the Neptune suite, I think you automatically get the Have It All package, which includes like the drinks and Wi-Fi and all that. It was, spoiler alert, this was probably the best cruise I've ever been on. And in large part, that was because of the crew of the Koningsdam, the Neptune suite, and the perks that came with it. And of course, the fact that it was Alaska, something that I never really imagined I would see in my lifetime. And I'm really glad I did.
Well, now that you're back from your cruise, and as you know, Emma stepped in for you last week, Emma and Matt, and I will say, make sure you go to thecruiseglobe.com. I just put it in while you were talking here and tracked you. Go to the Cruise Globe, put your itinerary in and watch it. It's so cool.
Okay, well, first of all, the fact that you said that Emma and Matt replaced me is a little disturbing, but I'll deal with that separately. But yeah, I have actually, I've been a huge fan of Emma's for a very long time. And ever since she started talking about this, I'm like, I've got to get my list together, because like on Norwegian's cruise site, you can go to a part of the page where they list all of your different cruises, what date they were. And I want to gather all that and enter it into the Cruise Globe, because I think it'll be so much fun to see like all the different routes that I've taken since I started. I'm really into this idea. It's very cool.
All right, man. Well, welcome back. And we'll talk to you next week. Staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you.
As always, glad to be here.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Chris just returned from the very first sailing of Norwegian Aqua. It was a 7-night cruise out of Port Carnival, Florida, down to the Eastern Caribbean, and he joins us to talk about it. Welcome, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. So before we get to the ship itself, we'll take a step back here. Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take this 7-nighter on Aqua? I know you're down in the Bradenton area, so obviously you're in Florida here.
Being the brand new ship and the print show intrigued us. And we had been on 17 other NCL cruises.
Nice.
So we were like, let's try this Prima class and see what it's all about. And it was an opportunity to be on the very first, 7-day inaugural sailing. And that's something we had never done before. So it just seemed like the next step with NCL to try it out.
So 17 cruises with NCL, that's top loyalty, right? Or close to it?
Yeah, we're Sapphire and fitting, to the next level.
Being in Florida, do you drive in day of?
Yes, we drive the morning of. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Okay. How was the embarkation once you got to the cruise terminal, from the curb to the ship, and any first-time hiccups, I guess we'll say?
No, there was none. They dropped us off, in the front of the terminal. It was Terminal 10, which is, for us, the old Epic terminal, and pretty much walked up the escalator and went through security pretty quick. This was somewhere around 11:30. Of course, we got to the main portion of it, and the line was pretty long, but we were in the latitude side, and we were probably in line maybe 15, 20 minutes at tops. It was probably one of the faster ones we had. They on their new app, you can scan your passport, which makes it nice when you get up there. And basically she took some information and handed us the room keys, and off we went.
Now, you're stepping on board Aqua for the first time. A lot of NCL ships in the past decade or so, kind of when you walk on board, you're kind of walking in a hallway and then kind of cutting that left or right and then getting to experience your first impressions of the ship. How was Aqua for you?
Oh, absolutely beautiful. I describe it as a high-end hotel, but not over the top. Very subtle colors. I mean, you've been on it too. It's just beautiful when you walk into it, but it's not overstated and overdone. You walk pretty much right into the atrium, and then off we went. Your first impressions are, wow, this is. If you're used to the breakaway class and the breakaway class, it is a different experience when you walk in, and it's much more modern than their ships that have been out lately.
Yeah. For the listeners who have sailed the Prima or Viva, just that main atrium alone is just so much better than those first two classes. They actually got this right with moving some of the bars out of there and more space. It's just, it's amazing there. So you make your way to your stateroom. What kind of stateroom did you book for this 7-night cruise, and what did you think of it?
We had a family balcony on deck 12, and it was incredible when you open up the door, the size of the room. And people have been on ships understand when you can fit 4 people across between the sofa and that desk, it's a pretty big room. And the bed doesn't have a bed skirt on it, and it's high off the floor, and you can almost fit a person under there and your luggage. Bathroom was just absolutely spectacular. That was probably one of the nicer ones we've ever seen. Plenty of room. There were absolutely zero complaints about that room. It was beautifully understated. There wasn't, overly bright colors or gaudy work. It just was very high-end looking. Bed was incredible.
And a lot of space in the bathroom, too. I was surprised, like even the random drawer in the bathroom, which you never really see on cruise ships, was a nice little touch there.
Yeah, the drawer, it was probably the most fascinating thing. Like, holy smokes, there's a drawer in the bathroom that actually opens and you can put stuff in. I mean, the shower you could stand and walk around in, and even the shower head, Doug, the little 4 settings on the back. It was the little things and how the door pivoted on that hinge it just was really high end. It was really nice.
What did you think about how modernized the cabin is, since it is like one of the newest cruise ships in the world at this point?
Of course, I'd watched a couple of, YouTube videos for a few of them that we follow besides you. And, they had pointed out the plugs on the side of the bed on both of the lamps. And, there were plugs there were so many plugs, you didn't even need an electric plug-in cord anymore. There were so many spots to plug your phone in, and you were like, well, which spot do I pick now?
Right. I felt the same way. I travel with a lot of gear, cameras, iPads, MacBook, and I was like, I have more plugs than gear right now, which is very rare.
Yep. I had more plugs. I had more, fittings at the end, and I end up, with the drawer at the desk, I ended up putting all the extra cords, cables, and everything in there. I'm like, you don't need any. And the fact that there's a plug next to the bed for people that need a plug near the bed was a pretty great. The TV was great itself too. We had no issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
I like their new digital thermostat where you can push do not disturb, or it lights up when the light panel lights up outside, so the room steward knows you're actually in the room. So that stuff, and it was understated, but it worked.
Let's talk about the food on Aqua. We'll start at the buffet area, the Surfside Grill. Now, there's really 2 buffets if you count the Deck 8 Indulge down there, but we'll start at the top first here by the pool. What did you think of the buffet, and how was your experience in there throughout the week?
I think it's one of the areas, again, that they may try to rethink the flow in there. On Sea Day, during lunch, it was, very crowded. You had to either go to the Palomar side or outside to find a table. And the fact that to get from the front of the ship to the aft elevators, you have to go through the buffet is a little iffy for me. If Palomar is closed, you've got to walk through the buffet. So it could get a little crowded in the walkways when you're walking through there.
Did you find the quality of the food was good?
Yeah, the quality of the food I thought was even slightly better than the Dawn we had just taken out of Tampa in December. I thought it was just a notch a little bit better. The presentation seemed to be a lot better. The new drink stations where you can just tap your card and, soda comes out or of that. The whole layout just seemed way more modern and easier.
Are you more of a buffet person for breakfast, or do you do sit-down restaurants?
We actually go to the Local or Oceans for breakfast, believe it or not.
That's actually even better there. So what we'll do here is I want to ask you so much to kind of unpack as we do this. So Did you hit up the back part of or just aft of the Surfside Cafe, which was the Surfside Grill, more of the burgers and dogs type place? Yeah, we did. And, it's funny, as much as we've been on the ship and I studied the deck plans, I couldn't even find it the first day until I realized it's right outside the door from Vibe Beach Club. And, we went back there and, it was to me, it reminded me of like the exterior buffets on the Epic and stuff, and went back there and it was still just as, it was good. There was, it's a typical buffet and burgers, fries, and, chicken. With the Local, which is their basically 24-hour round-the-clock type food venue there, how was the breakfast in there?
Oh, excellent. And I will say, Doug, I think another thing that surprised us was the volume or the number of staff. There were staff everywhere. And, you sat down and right away water was there within a few minutes. And I don't know if you noticed, but, all of the servers have more or less, I guess you would call them an iPad, and they're taking your order right on it. And the next thing, here comes the food by somebody else. And it was just really, there was so much staff. I mean, that in the restaurants and stuff, it was just a very different upscale. Even for the Local, it was very, just a great experience. We had zero issues in there.
They have 2 main dining rooms, we'll call them, Hudson and the Commodore. Did you get to go into any of those?
Yeah, we went to both of them.
What is the difference?
I think really just the location. One is off to the side, one is off the aft.
Okay.
The aft view was just spectacular when you were sitting there. The number of pictures we took with the sun setting, which I believe is the Commodore, is the aft. Hudson's is on the side. That was it was a little bit, it wasn't as bright, it was more of a darker version of the main dining room. Mm-hmm. Not as many windows and stuff like that, but the Commodore is beautiful back there.
That's right. Hudson's is when you walk out of there, that's where there's like the teppanyaki restaurants around there. Yep. And so is the whiskey bars back there. Yeah. Okay.
That's great. Yeah. Tucked, and the little wine bar is tucked way back
That's
there.
That's right. Yeah. Swirl. As far as the food in the main dining room, how was the service and how did the food stack up?
Service was, again, outstanding. I was surprised by the number of staff and the people that they had on the ship and in the main dining rooms. The food was on par with the same, breakaway classes that we've had. The menus are basically the same. We don't really have any, issues with the food in the main dining room. It was all very good. The portion sizes were what we thought were great for a main dining room. And, they took those plates away and cleaned up, and the service was fantastic. everybody was smiling and happy. It was a good experience.
Yeah, I had a couple of delicious lunches in there in the Commodore a couple of days on our sailing. And I would say it feels to me like they've really stepped up their main dining room food because it was a little hit or miss at times. As far as specialty restaurants, any of those throughout your voyage?
Yeah, we did Le Bistro. Believe it or not, for the first time on our 18th NCL cruise, we finally did Le Bistro. And we typically always do Cagney's 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Nice. Cagney's 3, 4, or 5 times?
Well, you get 3 with the more at sea, and then you get 2 as a platinum and above. So there's 5 right there.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, with your status there. What did you think of as your first time going to Le Bistro?
I thought it was, more upscale. The menu is you can still get some of the same things from the Cagney side in terms of steak that they had there, but it was the food was fantastic. I swear I had the best pork chop in that place that I have ever had in my lifetime. I could cut it with a fork.
Nice. This was at Le Bistro?
At Le Bistro, yep.
Okay. I haven't been there
Doug,
in years.
You gotta try the pork chop at Le Bistro. I'm telling you can cut it with a fork.
All right. And then how about Cagney's?
Cagney's to us is just like the go-to place. The meals were basic. I thought that the ribeye was a little bit better on this cruise than it had been in the few that we've gone in the past. Mm-hmm. One thing we did notice is that there's no more white tablecloths in Cagney's. I don't know if you noticed that. The wood tables, the decor has all changed to be so much more modern with the gray wavy roof. It's not that old NCL dark Cagney's.
Right.
But service was fantastic. Again, I mean, it was incredible. The number of people, the staffing that they had. And we didn't wait more than 2 or 3 minutes to get seated at each of the restaurants.
Any other dining venues we didn't hit on?
Well, we finally did indulge. I had heard so much about it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with a lot of people. It's probably becoming one of our more favorite spots. We started going there for lunch every day, and the concept is amazing. The speed is amazing that the food comes, and it was all fantastic. And the fact that you could get food from Q, which is not actually on the ship, if from the Encore and Bliss and where the Q smokehouse is, the little brisket and stuff, the food was fantastic there. I understand their concept, trying to get people away from the buffet and, into indulge. I understand what they're trying to do. But I think, Doug, a lot of people don't understand when they're on the ship what indulge is. I think if they did a little better job of communicating maybe to people before they get on this. Some people thought it was a specialty restaurant. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh no, it's more or less an extension of the buffet, but you're served.
Yeah, I noticed that on our sailing too, especially the first 2 days where it was just wide open for lunch. And I'm like, you never see this. What the heck is happening? Well, turns out really no one knew about it. And I'm like, why not? There's like Asian, Mexican, barbecue, tapas, everything you want is down here, desserts. And finally word got out, I think like day 2 or 3, the cruise director may have mentioned it, and then the secret was out. Yeah.
I mean, the concept is fantastic. I wish they could roll it out on, the other ships. It would be probably a logistics nightmare for them, but the concept is fantastic. I just think they need to market it a little bit better.
Let's talk about the entertainment on this sailing. And you mentioned earlier that Prince was going to be a big draw for you, the Prince tribute show they have on board. How was the entertainment and how did it stack up?
The entertainment I thought was fantastic. There was a main show nearly every single night. We originally got hooked on NCL over the entertainment and the shows, and they had kind of disappointed us the last couple of years. And I saw the number of shows that they were going to have on the ship was another reason why we wanted to go. Mm-hmm. The Fleetwood Mac tours, or the Fleetwood Mac show in the main theater was spectacular. That was fantastic. I had never been to The Price is Right, which I'm sure people in my generation, we watched it from Bob Barker started. Mm-hmm. And it was incredible. Like it was the same shows. I mean, the same games and, come on down. I mean, that was great. And they did the Ocean Music Fest in there, which unfortunately we didn't get to because it was at the exact same time as the Glow Party. Mm-hmm. But they did in Sid Norman's and on the pool deck, They did basically a 70s, 80s, 90s, a glow, and a Latin night, which was dance parties, which was fantastic. The Prince show came up on Friday, and they didn't offer reservations, and I knew this was going to be one of those where you got to get there an hour ahead of time. And we went to the deck 8, which I thought for sure there would be some seat. And we got up there, and there was nothing. There was nothing on 7, so we ended up on 6, which I'm actually kind of glad we did, as it set up like a concert, and you saw the moving pieces. And it was a fantastic show, to the point that we got right back in line to see the 9:30 show from an actual seat, to see and to experience it from, being in the theater itself versus being on the floor. The show was fantastic. I'm not a huge overly, Prince fan person. Most of us have heard most of his songs, but I thought the show was fantastic. Even when the baby grand piano comes up out of the stage, was great.
Yeah, so how was it down there on 6? I watched it from 8 as well, and I was very comfortable just sitting up there. I don't know. It felt a little awkward to me if I was to be down there, a person who can't dance, just to kind of stand down there. But how was it on 6?
Well, I turned 60 tomorrow, so
okay, happy birthday.
I was a little bit like you. I was up against the back wall, like we were at the high school prom.
Right.
And, believe it or not, there's probably a 10, 15 staff people in the audience, of course, egging you on to get off the back wall and to mingle and interact more. But I mean, you're virtually right at the stage. They're standing right next to you as those pieces and stuff move around. And I know it's hard for people to understand what we're saying about the set pieces moving around, but at the end of the show, when they all come together, and you saw it from up above, how it lit up.
Yeah.
And, and down below, we're watching it all as that happens. And it was fantastic. I'll tell you, if I could recommend anything to anybody out there, I don't care whether you can dance or don't dance, or whether you're shy, see both shows. Go to the floor and be down there with people interacting. It's fantastic. And then see it up above to see what you do kind of miss when you're on the floor, what you don't actually see what those set pieces become.
That Fleetwood Mac's rumor show they had on there, that was
fantastic.
The best stage show performance, whatever you want to call it, I've seen on a cruise ship in over 20 years. Like, it was just, no show, well, Prince did too, but no show has ever kept me in the theater the entire time, because I have very bad ADD and I just watch for like 10 minutes and leave. And here I was just like, it was just awesome. Like the lead guitarist, the drummer, everything was just so amazing.
Fantastic. And I love the fact that they narrated the story of the band and what was going on with each song, because unless you were really, a fan of them, you're like, oh, that, and you heard the songs and you're like, oh, I recognize those songs, and the story that went behind it. It was fantastic. Yeah. Again, it was, standing room only, and every seat, and you probably saw, like on deck 8, there's a lot of places for you to stand up there.
That was me.
And it was, yeah. So you could make a quick exit, right? That's kind of the other thing that drew us to the ship, was the amount of shows that they were going to have in the theater. Whereas, you and I both know that they weaned away from their shows, and we understand the cost-cutting part of it coming out of the pandemic, but that's what made them who they were and what a lot of us got hooked on. The entertainment was fantastic. Even all of Sid Norman's, they did the 70s and I think the 90s in there. Again, it is, from what we understood, it's 20% bigger than the Prima and Diva. And, it was pretty packed, but you weren't in there like a sardine. And everything was just very well done.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought about the entertainment outside of the theater, because, like, I know at the atrium there every night we had a duo, like a Filipino duo.
Yep, they were there.
I know there was a piano player in the Metropolitan Bar down there in the back by the dining room. Yeah, so like a lot of entertainment, and the casino on this one too is just like, it's very linear, I guess you would say. Is that
it's very
correct?
lined up.
Yeah.
Yep. We appreciate the fact that they now have a smoking section where you can actually walk through the casino. And Another thing too, I think with the ship itself, if you've been on, the breakaway and the plus class, you need to throw out like all your preconceived, I know exactly how the Encore Bliss and Escape and Joy are going to be laid out, and go on here with an open mind and understand. And I think you got this too. Deck 6, 7, and 8, the main corridor is on the starboard side, right, hugging the hull.
Yep.
So if you understand that's the main corridor and you go down there and everything is branching off, it makes sense after a while.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's come close to their deck 8 with, you saw the lounge chairs, all the different types of seating was everywhere, was incredible. And I'm sure the ship was sold out. It was never, Doug, where you couldn't find a seat or it was so jam-packed you were uncomfortable. And I think another thing, when people come on and say, oh, the pool's so small, I don't think there was more than 15 to 18 people ever in the main pool with a completely sold out plus a group of people. Even on the infinity pools on the edges, there was only maybe 6 or 7 or 8 people. A majority of the people were deck 8 all the way around was where everybody went. And, the main pool deck area had, it was full, but it wasn't like you were like, oh my God, look at all the number of people.
Sometimes it feels like all the negative is just talking points that people regurgitate because they don't like something and they've heard it or they've read it somewhere, but they haven't experienced it for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you've been on about how many people are really ever in the pool?
Yeah, I mean, there was probably, of course, in fairness, we were in Northern Europe, so it was a little chilly, but I never saw more than a couple people in the pool on my ceiling. But with you being in the Caribbean and never seeing it packed, that speaks volumes there too. How about the sea days though? How were they as far as crowds and congestion?
It wasn't, and that's really what I was referring to. Like on the sea days, it was not like you were like dreading a sea day. I mean, it was just everybody. You could walk deck 8 without bumping into people and everybody going in and out, and you'd walk through the pool deck and just go from one end to another without any real crowds all over you. I just think they did a great job. I understand the concept of spreading everybody out throughout the ship. I think it works. If you go in there with an open mind, if you are an NCL fan and you go in there with an open mind, it'll make sense when you walk it around and understand what they tried to do.
Did you do the Aqua coaster?
We did it 16 times.
Really? Get out. 16 times the Aqua coaster?
Yep, we would ride it back to back to back to back to back. I congratulate them on a fantastic concept that everybody can ride, whether you were young, but there were not very many children on this cruise, maybe under 50, but riding with their parents or their grandparents, which was fantastic. Disabled people, anybody could ride it, and the joy on their faces everybody absolutely loved the thing. It was the best. I've never experienced anything like it. It was fantastic. They have a video of it.
Oh, so you can actually purchase your video?
Yeah, it's actually free when you get off of it. And I don't know if you saw when you walk up the steps to go around the corner, there's a board there. And you have to click it right then, but you go there and you click on your picture and you ask what room, and it sends it to the photo library, and you go down there and it's free, and it's a video of you on it. It actually records the video at the end when you're coming out, but it's kind of cool. They show you in the tube, and then they do an animated version of the slide coming through. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we would literally get out of it, and if there was nobody in line, we would just hop right back on it.
16 times, that's crazy.
I will tell everybody the left side is faster than the right side.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yep.
You heard it here. So you leave Port Canaveral. You're embarking on this 7-night Eastern Caribbean cruise. Give us your first port of call and give us your highlight.
First port of call was a Great Stirrup Key. Spectacular, calm, beautiful day, and brought us over on a tender, and went in the water there. It's a little bit chilly there, but that island has come a long way from when they started. Again, you could find a chair on the beach, walk around. They had even little carts of Starbucks and beer, and it was we thought it was beautiful.
Did you notice any construction where they're building the pier or they're going to start the pool here pretty soon?
The pier is like an eighth of the way done, and they were working on that when we were there. But the new stuff, like the new pool, which is kind of to the left of where you get off, the tender boats, that stuff hadn't started yet. We had only really seen the pier under construction.
So after Great Stirrup, what was your next port?
St. Thomas.
Nice. And how was it there?
It actually was another beautiful day. And St. Thomas, is been there a number of times, but it's a great little port to walk around. And, of course, you got to go on the lift to the top of the mountain, take your pictures, and come back down again. The little ski gondola.
Where does NCL dock in St. Thomas? Is it Havenside or is it Crown Bay? So I guess, is it right there next to the lift or across the harbor from the lift?
No, it's the one near the lift. You get off and you're only walking about 200 yards to it. When they dock, you can actually, well, if you're on obviously, if you look to the side, you can see the lift going up and down the mountain. It's a very short walk.
Anything else after the lift in St. Thomas?
No, that was it for us. We'd been there a number of times.
Okay, and then what was your next port of call after St. Thomas?
Tortola, which again is, it was a beautiful day. And these were days in just the mid to high 70s. And 80-ish or so. And again, Tortola is a beautiful place to visit. We walked around the town. And again, it wasn't that overly crowded. It was kind of odd, Doug. We were the only ship in St. Thomas, and we were the only ship in Tortola. So it wasn't overly crowded for us. So, just walked around and enjoyed the sights and some pictures of the ship and got back on. And then the next stop was Dominican Puerto Plata. It was almost like a tropical Florida rainstorm. Poured the whole time we were there. So not many people got off the ship. But they cleared up about 2 hours before we left, and we actually didn't get off because of the rain. You
lucked out because all the other ships are starting to head over to Europe now for the Med season and the Northern Europe season. Yep. So if you were there even 2 weeks earlier, you would have been right in the middle of 5 ships at St. Thomas and a full house in Tortola and all that. So you were lucky there. So after Puerto Plata, was it any other ports or back to Port Canaveral?
Back to Port Canaveral. Yeah, that was the only port we actually had a fellowship there, and it was Celebrity was there with us, parked next to us. Okay. And then we a sea day headed back to Port Canaveral.
So it's time to debark Port Canaveral, debark Norwegian Aqua, rather. How was that process, and do they have their stuff together there for debarking the very first cruise on that ship?
I will say it was we do the self-assist, and we docked at 7, and by 7:25, we were off that ship.
Wow.
They had the lines, for those of us with self-assist, and got in line. It was very neat, orderly. There was, walked right through. Of course, they snake you through the ship, and then scan your key card. Right off we went into immigration. They take your photo or snap your picture, and we were out of that. From beginning to end, it took us about 35 minutes total.
Not bad at all. Wow. That's
No, it was you've experienced some long lines to get off the ships and stuff, and it was an absolute breeze. It was actually stunning. We were outside waiting for the shuttle pickup at 7:35 in the morning. It was crazy.
Yeah, I will say this, Port Canaveral always seems to have their stuff together when it comes to debarking, though, They're really good.
Yeah,
at it.
We've done Tampa a few times, and it's a little bit of a longer process to get out of there, because it's a little bit older and congested in there.
Well, now that you're one of the first people to sail the brand new Norwegian Aqua, do you have any first-time tips to offer anyone?
Definitely 100% go on that Aqua coaster as much as you possibly can. It is an absolute joy. And again, I think if you go with a very open mind about what you've heard and didn't hear about the Prima class, you get on there and it is a very grown-up, modern, a beautiful, beautiful ship with seating, a very pleasant crew, a ton of crew. And I think that you'll have a fantastic time. And you have to see both Prince shows. Doug, I'm surprised you didn't. And we're going to get you on that dance floor one of these days down there.
One of them, yeah. I'll do it once. Did you do the drop slide at all?
Yes, and that's oh boy, I'll tell you, when you're sitting there and that thing counts down and you drop in that bag and come down to the end, it's pretty friggin' fast.
Yeah, it is.
You just got to enjoy life a little bit and just try things you may be a little bit hesitant of. For those people who don't go to indulge, and I think you would recommend this too, you've got to go.
100%. I'm addicted to barbecue anyways, but every day I was getting at least one option from the smokehouse, from Q there.
Smoked turkey and the brisket, you had to.
Yeah, 100%. Well, looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
I guess the biggest highlight was being on the inaugural. I think what was special was leaving they let all the ships leave Port Canaveral, and we were one of the last ones to leave, and we had a couple of, I guess they're fireboats doing the water salute.
Okay.
And we followed them all the way out to Port Canaveral, and being on the ship for the first time was pretty, if I could recommend it to people, I would have them do it. It's a very special thing that you don't forget.
Do you feel like the value was there for the price you paid? I know it was kind of at a premium because of it being an inaugural sailing and all, but was the value actually there?
Doug, we had a balcony room and we only paid $3,800, so I thought it was a pretty good price for the value, the ship, the itinerary, and I would highly recommend it.
All right, Chris, to wrap it up, your final thoughts of Norwegian Aqua.
I would say that it's a fantastic, beautiful ship that is very, very well done, well laid out. There's plenty of things to do, plenty of places to go. You've got to go into the arcade. It's fantastic in there. The pickleball courts, the glow court, the golf simulation where it tracks the ball was another fun thing to do. Got to go on the Aqau coaster. And I think if you go on there with a very open mind about the ship itself, you will have a fantastic time. Do not miss the Prince show. You must go to both. The Fleetwood Mac, you have to see it in the theater. And I think that you guys will have a great time. Beautiful, beautiful cruise.
We've been talking with Chris about his 7-night sailing on Norwegian Aqua out of Port Canaveral. Chris, thank you so much for giving us this detailed review. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate the time.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,